with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, July 6, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, author, The Age of Acrimony, How Americans Fought to Fix Their Democracy, 1865-1915, the curator of political and military history at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, Jon Grinspan, will be joining us today. Also on the program today, 20 states surpassed the 70% vaccination rate. 15 million of those people missed their second dose. Meanwhile, as of June, more than 99% of the COVID deaths in that month were from unvaccinated people. Meanwhile, in Missouri, hospitalizations spike because they are one of those states where they have minimal vaccination rates. U.S. forces leave Afghan airport in the dead of night, largest air base in the country, just as U.S. forces prepare to leave by August. We are now entering the inflection point on Biden's agenda. It's just days away to determine what moves they'll make on the infrastructure bill as progressives start to push the Medicare expansion. A gas pipeline leaves a huge inferno. A gas pipeline leak sparks a huge inferno in the Gulf of Mexico. Meanwhile, the Dakota Access Pipeline protester saboteur sentenced to 8 years in prison. The pro-Trump social media platform that was launched last week was hacked on its launch day. A key witness in the Assange extradition case recants. Unclear how it will impact Assange's prosecution. Biden White House to pull back on sanctions as a weapon. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a good day yesterday, and a happy 4th of July, and a welcome back as well to Emma Vigeland, who was on vacation, a little soggy.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. It was a not very sunny vacation. But you know what? I went bowling. I did well. So there's that.
Oh, all right. Don't leave us hanging. What does well mean?
Well, I don't remember my score because I had some drinks.
All right. And was this candlepin bowling, or was this the...
It was not, but that was a question because I was in that, New England area, which I don't even, know what that is, but apparently that's the way to go.
That's the kind of bowling that we do up there with candlepins.
Yeah. No, it was just standard.
Wait, what?
Curvy. Candlepins are just like sort of, I don't know what they're shaped like a long pill almost. I don't know why. I mean, I didn't grow up thinking there was anything like candlepin bowling was candlepin bowling. That was it.
Yeah, it's that and roundabouts. You guys love that in Massachusetts for some reason.
Well, we call them rotaries. So, but yeah, we call them rotaries because they're good.
Yeah, got it. No, they're not. They're awful. Just like candlepin.
Actually, I got to defend rotaries. That's good road safety.
Yeah, the key is you just got to be aggressive. I mean, they say yield to the rotary. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
Just blow through.
Yeah. It is it's one of those moments where it's just like whoever's going to win is going to win here. And that's it. Like it's just it's basically your insurance rates as you enter it.
Go
Whoever's
Sox.
whoever's got the
That was bad.
cruddier car wins the Rotary. We should also say on Candlepin, yeah, it is a smaller ball.
I mean,
you can
why
almost
like
hold it in your palm?
I don't understand that. You're just messing with a good thing. I mean, bowling, it's pretty universal, and then that would throw me off entirely in terms of weight and hands and everything.
That's why you got to mix it up. Folks, let's turn to the news of the day. We are, I mean, the two big stories going forward are going to be the impact of July 4th weekend on those states that have low vaccination rates. The Delta variant, I think we said a couple of weeks ago, it had doubled to 20%. It's probably closer to 40% now in terms of all cases around the country. It's a little bit tricky to tell because we don't have great system to assess the nature of variants. But to the extent that we can tell, it seems to be somewhere around 40%. It is anticipated that it will be the majority of infections in this country not too long from now. And the overwhelming number of deaths that are coming from COVID are now coming from unvaccinated people. And to the extent that there have been breakthrough infections that have led to hospitalizations and illnesses, that usually happens in the most vulnerable populations that exist regardless of vaccination. In other words, older folks over 65, 75, over 85 who have been vaccinated, to the extent that there are any people, and there really are so few, who are dying who are vaccinated, it is people who are very are elderly and very continue to be the most susceptible to COVID in our population, broadly speaking. And so, and just, you know, a word of caution, there's a big report out of Israel that I know made my daughter nervous, that that the vaccination there, Pfizer vaccination, I believe it is 65% effective against the Delta variant, which is still incredibly high. And that is just for breakthrough infections. Again, in terms of serious illness from COVID and death, very, very low. Hospitalization and death, very low. No sense of whether your chances of getting a long-term COVID problem, long haulers, as they say, if you're vaccinated, we just don't know yet because the data is not in. But that's going to be one of the stories going forward in the month of July, because when we get 2 weeks out from 4th of July, we remember how that goes. That's when you start to see the infections in the beginning of the hospitalizations. And then the other story is within 2 weeks, we're going to have what is happening with the infrastructure bill is going to happen, essentially. The bipartisan bill still seems to be around. Mitch McConnell desperate to try and figure out a way to sink it. And to the point where he's saying, even though the president has no strategy of linking, and even though there are Democrats who have said, like, I won't vote for this unless I get that as well, which is not a necessarily top-down strategy. Mitch McConnell has said, we're going to filibuster the bipartisan bill unless there is no linkage. And I just don't know how that's supposed to resonate with anybody. We'll see. He is nervous about both bills passing. And just one note on...
go on, Sam, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say one more thing, that it is clear in the bigger infrastructure bill, it seems like a lowered Medicare age is not going to happen. What appears to be happening is an expansion of Medicare benefits as they exist today. Unfortunate. Frankly, I would have liked both and drop the Medicare age 50, 55, just getting more and more people into this single payer system. But go ahead, Emma.
Yeah, no, I mean, if the Democrats are smart, they will essentially say, okay, fine. I know that's a huge if. They're going to wrap whatever hard infrastructure was going to be in this bipartisan package and just put it in the reconciliation bill, and then McConnell has no play. I mean, what is he really holding over Democrats' heads here? But what he knows is that 50 vote threshold for the Democrats is, they're walking a very thin line, and a lot can go wrong if they're going to try to do one massive reconciliation package.
Right. I mean, that's the bottom line. The question is, do Manchin and Sinema feel like they have enough cover from what Mitch McConnell's saying to crash a Democratic reconciliation bill? But, one upside potentially in the event that McConnell does crash it, and Manchin and Sinema are like, well, we did our best. I mean, that's ridiculous. You can't hold one piece of legislation based upon the way that people are going to vote for another piece of legislation. That's absurd. But we'll see. It's possible. The bipartisan bill functions as a cap on all of these different silos of so-called hard infrastructure. So in other words, just these numbers are off the top of my head. The Biden administration, I think, wanted $65 billion for broadband. Well, the bipartisan bill says, I think, $15 or $20 billion. There is no mechanism to increase that. The reconciliation bill will not be used to increase that. That bill functions as a cap. And that is, one of the ways in which I would imagine, Manchin and Sinema, we're using that as a way of enticing Republicans. But we will see. All right, let's just turn to this clip. This I found rather amazing. We are now in an era where people are coming back to work to some extent. We still have a lot of things that hold people back in terms of babysitters and scheduling and whatnot. But people are coming back to work based upon the numbers that we saw last month in terms of new employment figures. But the other dynamic that's happening right now is that people have used this past year to reevaluate what's important to them in their lives. There's a lot of people who are saying, I'm not going back for that low wage job. That was dead end. I'm just not going to do it. There's, I've maybe found other ideas on how I can make money. Maybe I can find a different job. Maybe it's just not worth it for me to eke out the arbitrage between the childcare and the job. Maybe I'll go without certain things because I want to stay home with the kids. Whatever it is, people are saying, I don't want to live in that rat race. Maybe I don't want to live in the city. Too tough. Rather go live in a suburban or rural area because I'm not going to make as much money, but I'm not going to have to work as hard. There's a lot of people. Or
I'm not going to have to pay as much in rent.
Or I'm not going to have to pay as much in rent. Exactly. The cost of living is lower. I mean, there's a whole raft of things that people are reevaluating about their lives right now, which makes sense, total sense. And that is highly problematic for people who rely on all these people to come in and be worker bees. And here's Donnie Deutsch, guy who made his bones in this world by starting out working on a railroad where he would actually hammer in the nails, the spikes into the railroad track. Oh, wait a second.
And then at night he would shovel coal, right? That's what I heard. I mean, he didn't sleep.
Let's listen to Donnie Deutsch.
What I see and what I feel is there's something changed in the American psyche of what I'll call just kind of the work ethic. And it's not just the $300 check. I think post-pandemic, people got used to staying at home. CNBC had a thing that they call the Great Resignation, that I think there's something like statistically 92% of Americans said they're either considering change jobs or leave their jobs. And I think that we've gotten a little soft in the pandemic. I love that James Gorman, the head of Morgan Stanley, said to his workers, I'm not going to give you the option. This is a separate issue about people not having jobs. This is about people going back to work. I'm not going to give you the option of coming back to work. If you feel okay going to a New York City restaurant, you can go back to work. And I'm one of these believers of this new soft attitude of, oh, work from home, flexibility and whatnot. There's something about people going back to work that has to happen. And if I was still running a company today, I would say, guess what? You're coming back to work. So there's two problems. So there are people who don't want to work, and there's the people who don't want to go back physically to work. And we've softened in the pandemic, and that's a concern to me.
If he was still running a company, maybe, he wouldn't be so soft himself, right? If he's lecturing everybody else on coming back to work, where's he? He seems to be zooming from home. I don't know, or maybe that powder blue wall is
pretty
his
hard Scrabble, pretty hard Scrabble background that he has there. Just to be clear, Donnie Deutsch joined his dad's advertising firm in 1983. 6 years later, because of how hard he worked, probably, his dad gave him full control of the agency. And then 21 years later, he sold the company for $265 million. I have no doubt that he worked very, very hard during that time as, having his own advertising agency. And in 20 years, he gets to retire or do whatever he wants. Whatever he wants. In other words, nobody's dictating to him that he has to go into work. If he goes into work, it's because he wants to. No one's dictating anything to him. And he sits there. I don't know why he's not in the studio at MSNBC there, but he sits in his $2 million, $3 million. Who knows how nice that apartment he is in, or maybe he's in a hotel. I have no idea. But the idea that these people are praising Goldman Sachs and anybody else for sort of, cracking the whip, the idea that we define in our society as going soft, the idea that, like, you know what? Quality of life is more important to me than going in and joining this rat race.
Didn't Goldman Sachs just come out and it was leaked, an internal document that their analysts, 80% of them, something like that, have mental health issues given the treatment at that company? Like, I mean, there's really no connection between productivity and coming into work and working hard, as he says, or driving them. I mean, but like, it's all about just exercising control, not actually creating. Yeah,
I'm not convinced. Well, and I think it was Morgan Stanley, maybe he said, but either way, I'm sure that that working in that environment is not healthy. And I don't know that it isn't more productive to come into work or stay at home. But what is really the point, and you're making this point, is that this is about control. Rather than letting the workers dictate the way that they want to lead their lives, he's saying something's got to happen to regain that control. And I don't know what he's got in mind, but let's hope that it doesn't. Let's hope that people can fashion a life for themselves, the life for themselves that they think is more pleasant. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Jon Grinspan. He's the author of The Age of Acrimony, How Americans Fought to Fix Their Democracy, 1865 to 1915. We'll be right back after these words. Folks, do you care about your internet security? I do. I don't think I'm overly, uptight about it, but it's like, if you have an easy way to make sure that what you're doing online is secure, particularly, we got these stories. I mean, I don't know that I'm a big fish in this world but you have hundreds of millions of dollars worth of ransomware that is going out there. Eventually, they're going to figure out that it's easier to go after just all sorts of random people. Well, the beauty of ExpressVPN is that it basically prevents you from being seen by your internet service providers. Internet service providers sell this information to companies, tech giants. They use your data to target you, and who knows what else. ExpressVPN creates a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet, so people can't peep on your online activity. It works on phones, works on laptops, it works even on routers. So everyone who shares your Wi-Fi can be protected. Super easy to use. You just fire up the app, you click one button, you browse as normal. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET, Wired, and The Verge. Also a good way to maybe let a streaming service in a foreign country think that you're in that area and get to see a whole host of programs that aren't available in the U.S. Then that becomes like, why? Why can't we see those? Anyways, I don't want you to go down that rabbit hole. The bottom line is you can protect yourself with ExpressVPN, and this is a super, super easy way to do it. Like I say, fire up the app, you click one button. Secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/majority today. That's ExpressVPN, expressvpn.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/majority. Also, summer months, you don't want to smell bad, but if you're like me, you also don't want to put any crap into your body. Things like aluminum or God knows what, which is why I was so psyched when I found Native. Sometimes, you need to protect yourself. I've already talked in the past, like, back in the day, didn't use any deodorant because I was afraid. You didn't really have any options. It was either you're going to put that garbage into your glands or not. Well, now no one has to because Native has your back. Native cares about the products you put on your body. They're all about stopping the stink the right way. You probably already know about Native's legendary aluminum-free deodorant, but they also have body wash, toothpaste, and their brand new mineral-based sunscreen. I had a good experience actually rubbing this on Saul. Like, there's many of them that he does not like because they're greasy. But this one, he sort of allowed me to put it on his face without biting my hand. Native broad spectrum SPF 30 sunscreen is lightweight. It absorbs quickly, and you can choose between unscented or coconut and pineapple. Kids like the coconut and pineapple. Dad likes the unscented. You can get their deodorant and body wash in amazing scents like coconut and vanilla, citrus, herbal musk, lavender, and rose. And of course, Dad's favorite, the unscented. Can't have the smell, folks. Sorry. You can even build your own personalized product bundles. Mix and match 3 of your favorite scents. Keep them on rotation so you got something for every occasion. It never even occurred to me that people would do that. But that makes sense, actually. Stay fresh, stay clean with Native by going to nativedeo.com/majority report, or use the promo code majority report at checkout and get 20% off your first order. That's nativedeo.com/majority report, or use the promo code majority report at checkout for 20% off your first order. And lastly, for the day, I don't know if these guys monitor the show and then decide when they're going to deploy these ads. Like, we don't choose when the ads come. Like, we get them from the media broker. But they seem to do it like almost now every day I shave. And I shave, I don't know if I have a schedule, but I feel like I must be on some type of schedule. It's weird. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. But bottom line is, with Harry's, you don't have to choose between a great shave and a fair price. And now Harry's is offering listeners their starter set at harrys.com/majority. I've talked about Harry's for years now. They deliver a close shave, comfortable shave, and they do so at a fair price, still as low as $2 per refill. Their blades are designed to stay sharp. Apparently, they did a recent study. Guys who shave 4 times a week said their 8th shave was as smooth as their first. And so for me, that lasts like 2 weeks. If I've shaved 4 times in 2 weeks, I feel like I'm doing it right. And they always seem to advertise on days I've shaved. Harry's bought a factory in Germany. They make precision engineered blades, and they've done so for over 100 years. Then Harry's design team combined a weighted ergonomic handle with their signature blade cartridge. It's a smart, simple razor. It's designed for delivering a close shave all along the contours of your face. My favorite aspects of the razor, of course, the trimmer shave head and the handles. because you can get really nice sort of classic looking handles. They stand behind the quality of their blades so much they have a 100% money back guarantee on Harry's.com. Harry's is giving their best offer to Majority Report listeners. New Harry's customers get a starter set at harrys.com/majority. You get a 5-blade razor. You get a weighted ergonomic handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel blade cover, all a $13 value for just $3. There's never been a better time to try Harry's. Go to harrys.com/majority to redeem your offer today. We will always put the coupon code, the codes in our podcast and YouTube description. And now I want to welcome to the program the author of The Age of Acrimony, How Americans Fought to Fix Their Democracy, 1865-1915. It's also the curator of political and military history at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. Jon Grinspan, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show.
Oh, I can't hear him. Can you hear him?
Yes.
I can't hear you now.
We can hear him.
Oh, bear with me.
I can hear you guys.
I'm having audio trouble, Matt. Let me try and reconnect. So I'd like to welcome to the program curator of political and military history at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, author of The Age of Acrimony, How Americans Fought to Fix Their Democracy 1865 to 1915. Jon Grinspan, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan.
Oh, well, I'm a big fan of both the Smithsonian and your book. So thanks for joining us. This is, in some ways, your book is an attempt to sort of, I guess, look at this era of the Gilded Age in a different light. Tell us about how that is.
Yeah, I guess over the last several years, we've heard people throw around the word unprecedented a lot. And I started to feel like there's this incredible era in American history that holds a lot of precedence for many of the things we're going through today. Anxieties about partisanship, political violence, voter suppression, voter turnout. And it's a really rich era in the late 19th century when there's a huge crisis of democracy and kind of a fight to fix democracy that ultimately gives birth to many of our norms, many of the things we consider normal politics. This is the origin story for it. So this book tries to kind of explain to people how we got to whatever normal looked like. It's gone now, but what was the birth of it? How did we get to the era of what we consider kind of calm civil politics that was created out of a previous crisis? And so I wanted to tell that story.
And we should say the Gilded Age is basically the last 30 years of the 19th century. 1870 to about 1900, I think is more or less the era that we're talking about. And you chose to also, in addition, sort of as a through line, to talk about one particular family, the Kelly family. Tell us about Pig Iron?
Pig Iron Kelly, yeah. There's this incredible through line through this history, from the Civil War, Reconstruction, Gilded Age, well into the 20th century. There's this one father-daughter dynasty, basically, that's kind of fighting for abolition, workers' rights, women's suffrage, ending child labor, and they just show up everywhere. The father, William Pig Iron Kelly, is a radical congressman who writes the language of the 15th Amendment, giving African Americans the right to vote. His daughter is key in passing anti-child labor legislation that we benefit from today and getting Social Security going. And they kind of befriended half the population of the country, the Abe Lincolns and the Frederick Douglasses and the W.B. Du Boises, and pissed off and fought with the other half. So they were just a really nice vehicle for telling this big history. And there aren't that many father-daughter dynasties in our history. So I thought it was fun to highlight their ups and downs and their assassination attempts and their fights and all of that.
And particularly then. I would imagine not so many. Well, I mean, not that many now, but particularly even then.
Will Kelly assumes his daughter will never be able to vote and raises her to be a politician in her own way anyway. And it's just an incredible story.
All right. Well, let's start. I mean, give us a sense of let's start with early Kelly and talk about where he starts out. Now, this is coming out of. There's, I guess, technically speaking, right, a slight overlap between the Gilded Age and Reconstruction. And where was Kelly on Reconstruction? And we should just remind people that Reconstruction, the era following the Civil War, where the Republicans, the then radical Republicans, were hoping to impose some rather big changes, very positive in my perspective, on America. And Johnson largely thwarted them, and following the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, almost was impeached, largely because of that, although there were other reasons. So where was Kelly in that moment?
Kelly is on the extreme radical fringe of the radical Republicans. He starts off as this working class Philadelphia politician, and he basically makes it his through line to protect working people throughout his long career, from 1814 to 1890. And he sees slaves and African Americans as falling into the category of working people. So he's fighting segregation in Philadelphia streetcars. He's introducing the first bill for African American voting rights on a federal level before slavery is even fully abolished with the 13th Amendment. And he's, traveling the South, giving speeches, getting shot at by KKK mobs who are opposing him well up through the 1870s, when he's he's really fighting for a lot of the values that we would hopefully hold today at a time when they're deeply unpopular with certain populations. And so his whole political career is really hard fought because there's a lot of opposition to these values of kind of expanding democracy.
And in that era, you write that voter participation is at an all-time high. I mean, explain to us, like, what was the sort of, I guess the feeling, and also, politics were pretty raucous at that time.
Yeah. I mean, we say voter turnout was record in every election, but really, if you want record voter turnout, you have to go back to the 1860s, 1870s, when 80% of eligible voters are going to the polls, really just blowing out of the water anything we've seen in our lifetime. And those denied the right to vote. Women, African Americans, people under 21 are still in the streets arguing the issues, reading the newspapers, fighting it out. Campaigns back then were deeply public and kind of revolved around torchlit marches at midnight with people singing songs, waving torches, drinking whiskey, throwing bricks. There's a way that politics is kind of the center of public entertainment at the time, as well as making the big decisions for American life. And we know from our own era how when you mix those two things together, entertainment and politics, the results can be really explosive. So we kind of sleep on this era, but I think it's the most interesting and most vibrant and dynamic. And you go through the Smithsonian collections, we have the torches and the banners and the uniforms from these rival, almost paramilitary political gangs that are fighting each other in the street each election.
And we're also seeing here in the now kind of a different approach to, say, inflation, right, or the deficit, whereas we saw in that era kind of a transition period with the gold standard as well. Like, what was Kelly's approach to that, and how involved was he in that transition?
Yeah, what's really interesting is you can kind of understand how these people are fighting each other over democracy or race or equal rights, but they're also fighting each other over the gold standard and the tariff, fighting in the street over it. Will Kelly comes to believe that there's a huge depression in the 1870s, and the only way to help working people is to increase the money in society. And so he starts pushing these plans called the Greenbacker plans to basically have more money in society because it's all being kind of held onto by the rich. So he wants to kind of help fight income inequality through just having more money. And then later, he gets this nickname Pig Iron because he wants to use tariffs and protective fees on imports to America to help American manufacturers and help American industry. And he kind of goes off on all these crazy schemes that aren't things that really fire us up today, but at the time drove American politics for a while. So he has his hand in all these different movements, from the end of abolition and the end of slavery, the increase in voting rights, up through kind of building an industrial economy and trying to protect workers in that economy. He shows up everywhere you want him to be, kind of. And so as a historian, he was a fun guy to start to tell his story because he's just on time, right where you want him to be.
Wait, now what was driving? I mean, on one level, I can understand that you have like intense partisan feeling at this time, right? Because largely Democrats were fighting to protect the institution and the economic system that was built up around slavery. The North is fighting to end it on some level and to, I guess, basically just, make the South be part of the country, not secede. So that partisanship, I can understand, sort of, lingers, right? I mean, the one day the guns stop firing, but I would imagine the resents continue. Was that basically the main driver of why there was this level of intensity, or was it also that there was that everybody had agendas at that point that were actually meaningful?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is there's so many drivers, right? They're fighting over race, they're fighting over slavery, but Reconstruction ends tragically in 1877, and they keep fighting for the next 20 years. Even as race and slavery kind of fall away from the national agenda, they're fighting over public schools, immigration, whiskey, all these issues that are driven, I think, at bottom by something that drives our political conflicts today, which is economic inequality and disruption and instability. That to live in Gilded Age America, whether you're born as a slave and have to make a life in freedom, or whether you're born in Ireland or Eastern Europe and have to make a life at a Chicago slaughterhouse, you have a lot of disruption, instability. You don't have communities you can hold on to. You're disconnected from your family. Your lives are getting harder. You know, mortality rates are going up. Americans are shorter in this era than in previous eras because they're getting diseases. They have bad diets. They live in filthy cities. So their lives are just shaken, and they're looking for something. They need a new tribe. And there are these two political parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And they're fundamentally different, but you might as well consider them kind of tribe X and tribe Y, because what people really want is membership. And so they'll dive into whatever tribe makes sense for them, for their religious community or their background or their class or their race. And then they'll kind of turn out to march and fight and vote because it's their tribe. And they want something that gives them a sense of membership. The way I think a lot of people today who feel disrupted, who suffer from income inequality, really look to these parties to offer some kind of new home, a new community that's being eroded in the rest of society.
I want to get to the election of Hayes and sort of the compromise that was involved in that and ending Reconstruction in a moment, but just to that last point, how much of the issue sets that were being fought over 20 years out were surrogates for that earlier fight? In other words, there was a consistency, wasn't there? I mean, you know, like when you start to hear about, you know, different types of taxes or immigrants or workers' hours, I mean, they seem to be surrogates for the fights that they were having, that they had in the Civil War. I mean, it being around race and slavery and about, you know, who's going to have power and control over society.
Yeah, I mean, no issues go away, right? They don't resolve any of these problems. So the fights of 1860 are still going on in 1885. But as you get into the Gilded Age, into the 1880s, younger people start saying, as they say, I don't care about the cut of trousers in 1861. Those are old issues. I don't care about secession. Especially in the North, they say, I just don't care about the South anymore. It's a minority region. It's not that powerful. You can't get my vote based on that. But they might equally hate Democrats because of tariff rates or attitudes toward unionization. They're still at each other's throats. They just keep adding on new issues. Just as today, I mean, we have all these fundamental issues that overlap and kind of reinforce each other. There's not one big ultimate issue that kind of determines everything. They just keep kind of balling in together with further issues. And so the parties never come to any kind of resolution as a result, because they just keep adding to conflict.
Let's talk about the election of was it Rutherford B. Hayes?
Yep.
That ended Reconstruction. Will you walk us through that, and then we can also talk the implication of the voter suppression that sort of made that whole deal necessary, it seems to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we start with the end of the election. We start about the end of Reconstruction, but we should start with the fact that it's the highest turnout election in American history ever, including any election we've seen in our times. And that's bearing in mind all the voter suppression, all the fact that there are tons and tons, probably 1 million African-American Republicans in the South, many of whom are voting with their lives at stake and not voting because of, you know, white Democrat KKK members at the polls with shotguns. This is a really bloody election. There's tons of voter suppression. Someone fires a gun through the window of Rutherford B. Hayes while he's eating with his family. There's a lot of conflict going on. And what happens, as we've become familiar with, is there's a clear popular vote winner. The Democrats win clearly the popular vote. This guy, Samuel Tilden, who is not that exciting a candidate, but clearly wins. But the electoral vote is still up for decision in 4 key states. And they kind of fight it out on the ground. And what you see is one party stealing the vote from another party and the other party stealing it right back, basically. They all have their preferred mechanisms for how to steal an election. And in the end, the Republicans managed to win the presidency. And that's really important, but they barter away a number of things in the process. And Reconstruction essentially ends at that point. But the thing I'd like to stress is that American voters really were ready. The majority of American voters, white voters in the Democratic Party and some in the Republican Party, really were done with Reconstruction. So the problem here at the end of Reconstruction, it's not just that a few politicians made a deal, it's that a large number of white Americans abandoned Reconstruction. I think there's a tendency to put it on, you know, these 5 guys in a room, but we see this betrayal of large numbers of voters who vote against Reconstruction in the 1870s and give up on this promise that they'd kind of made with these constitutional amendments.
And is that just, exhaustive? Like they're just exhausted from it? Or, I mean, what drives that kind of abandonment outside of, I mean, you could say leadership from the top once Lincoln was gone. But, I mean, there's got to be more structural issues that drive that tendency.
Yeah.
What are those?
I mean, there are a bunch. There's a huge depression around then. The Great Depression of 1873 is called the Great Depression until 1929 comes along. And there are a lot of people in the North who just don't care that much about Civil War or the South anymore. Some of them are still deeply racist and never really liked the idea of helping African Americans that much to begin with. There's really a betrayal of this old commitment. They lose interest. They move on. People like Will Kelly, who fought and bled to end slavery and give African Americans voting rights, basically by that point says, it's all settled. We're done. There's a really sad turning here. And I think there's a lesson for today on how quickly voters who support an idea can turn their back on it. Working on this book, watching how people were voting, it is frustrating and a little upsetting watching how quickly voters can abandon a commitment they've made before. And this opens up this next era where African Americans really lose political rights. I'm sorry, Sam.
Well, I'm sorry, but does Tilden lose if you don't have this massive wave of voter suppression of Black people? I mean, it's one thing to say that, that people got frustrated. I would imagine it's frustration as much as it is being tired of Reconstruction, because Reconstruction was sort of spinning its wheels, right? They didn't really front load it in the way that I think a lot of the radical Republicans wanted to in Congress because of Johnson. And there was no response, it seems to me, by the federal government to these, tens of massacres that were around, like massive massacres that in some places completely changed the trajectory of the political leadership there. But if those million Black voters who should have been able to vote and had maybe Reconstruction been front loaded in the way that it should have, they would have been able to vote. We get a very different outcome, don't we?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Tilden wins by about 250,000 votes. There are supposed to be 1 million Black voters in the South. But the thing is also that the Republican Party, a large portion of it had given up on Reconstruction too. So even if the good guys won, even if the Republican Party in the 1870s won, you'd still see this, the next couple presidents, they step back. And the Republican presidents, they still just don't fight on the ground, as you were saying, to kind of address these massacres, address this voter suppression. Basically, there's one core that wants to continue fighting for voting rights in the Republican Party. The Democratic Party is entirely hostile. And the people who, in the middle, these Republican majority, they just aren't going to fight anymore. Like, it's not something they're opposed to loudly and vocally, but they want to fight over economic issues or immigration. They kind of turn their blind eye to the South. And you can see what happens in a result. These voter suppression laws, the kind of rise of Jim Crow, it happens because states can do what they want without federal oversight anymore.
And how much does what's happening with the Supreme Court and their allowing for these voter suppression laws, like, 'cause I'm just trying to look at, like, I guess figure out what is the what's responding to what and who's responding to who. Like, Kelly, it seems like maybe the writing's on the wall that the electorate is not going to be there to support this.
Yeah.
But it's also of like, you tell me that the electorate constitutes this many Black voters and this many white voters versus a quarter of those Black voters and all these same white voters. I'm going to have a different sense of what the electorate's going to respond to. And as the Supreme Court starts to allow voter suppression, it seems to me like this is just the writing's on the wall and my political future doesn't lie here on some level.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I listened to you speaking with David Blight yesterday, and he talks about this. So there's just this, within a couple of years, this real deterioration, and the Supreme Court is leading the way in a lot of that. And if you're a congressman, if you're Will Kelly, and you look around, and he represents West Philadelphia, there are all these row houses full of basically middle and working class white laborers. And there's some African Americans, but they're not that many. He's thinking, as a congressman thinks, as an elected official thinks, how do I keep getting elected? And they're continuous political campaigns, and they're losing. The Democratic Party, this party that had previously been tied to slavery and secession, it wins back Congress in one of the biggest landslides ever in 1874. The writing is on the wall, as you say. It looks like the forces of campaigning, the forces of winner-take-all elections, the forces of constantly having to hold on to your seat and hold on to power are pushing these politicians who had great goals a decade before into chasing the votes. And I think that's mostly what happens. And I say that because I don't want to let the American voters off the hook a little bit. There are large numbers of voters who wipe their hands of this titanic struggle that they'd been engaged in before. And I think we need to, in our own era, be kind of cognizant of how that can happen.
And then it feels like the exhaustion of that era leads an opening to sort of anti-democratic forces, I guess you could say. That Francis Parkman, tell us about that op-ed, I guess it is. It's sort of just perfectly timed. Now that we've dealt with Reconstruction, can we really reevaluate this whole concept of everybody voting? Because, man, that was a hassle.
Yeah, it sure was a hassle. He says, this is a famous historian in Boston, and he's really respected as a historian, but he writes this article, The Failure of Universal Suffrage, in 1878, that says, democracy doesn't work. Equality is a bad idea. Not everyone is created equal, and majorities are usually wrong. So what we need to do is find some way around democracy, because what happens is it's allowing basically working class people and immigrants and African Americans to dominate the polls. We need to stop listening to this majority. And this is a time when, people who were less educated and less well off voted at higher rates than people who were more educated. The kind of people who were elites in society, they said a gentleman never votes, or bother politics, just kind of dismissing all engagement. And he's saying majorities are wrong, democracy doesn't work, and we need to fundamentally change how we choose power, how we delineate power in our society, because these people are just going to outvote us every time because they've got the numbers. And there's really, I don't want to sound like I'm endorsing this because it's really essentially heinous and anti-democratic. There's a voice coming out, turning after the 1870s against widespread mass democracy and mass participation. And more Americans start saying, do we need this turnout? Do we need this high engagement? And they ultimately create a new political system that has much less turnout. And they really managed to tamp down and suppress and discourage African Americans, young people, poor people, working class people from voting in those large numbers that they previously had. And what's amazing is you can see it start with one bad election. 1876, everything goes wrong, and you can see the 50 years of kind of rising engagement in democracy start to peak and fall after that. And I think after 2020, we might want to be cognizant of what one bad election can lead to.
John, I got to say, it's impossible for me to imagine that we would have a society where we would, where our leaders would try and diminish the opportunity for people to vote. That is crazy, so far-fetched. I couldn't even conceive of such a thing. So what were the mechanisms that were used? I mean, people can go back, and I think I spoke to Carol Anderson about this some time ago, about the Supreme Court at that time was, imposing literary tests and poll taxes, and there was widespread desire to both make it difficult for Black people and, frankly, poor white people to vote at that time. What were the other things that were done to sort of, I guess, lessen the intensity and then the desire for people to come out and vote?
Yeah, they're kind of two interesting divergent paths in this area. And in the South, the elites who want to stop African Americans from voting, essentially the underclass in the South that's voting in large numbers, they use, as you say, this literacy tests, poll taxes, and that's all backed up by extreme levels of violence, the rise in lynchings, the presence of armed men at the polls. And they go, in a few short years from things like having 130,000 voters in Louisiana to having 1,300 voters of African-American background in Louisiana. They really obliterate Black voting in a few years. Now in the North, they take a different path. The elites and kind of the millionaires and the well-to-do in the North, the population they want to stop voting is working class white people, immigrants, kind of mobile, poorer people. And they can't just take their votes away. The Supreme Court won't let them disenfranchise people. So they settle on kind of discouragement. Politics is big and exciting and interesting, and they want to make it a hassle, a bother, a less exciting, less fun. They want really a revolution for more boring politics. So they introduce processes that'll mean lines at the polls. You start to vote in private on a government ballot as opposed to with the whole community into a ballot box with people shouting and yelling and drinking. They kind of end these big torchlit parades, and they start handing out lots of educational literature. They say more thinking, less shouting is basically the mantra. And it works. Discouragement is almost as powerful in some ways as disenfranchisement. Turnout falls. It's 80% of voters in the 1890s to less than half of voters by the 1920s. They really erode voting by immigrants, working class people, young people. And once you cut it off for a generation, it stops continuing because they're not teaching their children to vote. So we see really low turnout across most of the 20th century from these previous heights because of this successful effort at discouraging and kind of quieting politics.
And who's voting at that time? Like, what's happening with the progressive movement? And the progressive movement has elements of that too, where it's sort of like a in loco parentis. I'm not I don't know the exact term for it, but it's at that point there is this sort of quality of like, let's let the professionals handle it on some level.
Yes, yeah, just expert leadership. The experts should be voting, not you. Florence Kelley, Will Kelly's daughter, who is, really a righteous crusader for protecting children from, suffering in factories and all these causes we would admire and have benefited from. She really hates voters. She says the voters and the politicians are really just a funnel for the experts to pour their ideas into practice. That it's really about experts, it's about studies, it's about sociologists and social scientists who really know better than those average voters anyway. And so even though she benefits social democracy in many ways, electoral democracy is not front of their list. And as turnout starts to fall, you don't really see this population bemoaning it. They aren't sad to see these new immigrant voters not going to the polls, because in many ways it's easier to make reforms and make changes in a quiet democracy than in a loud one. And the bigger and louder the party conflict, the less they could ever get through. So they're kind of happy to see voter turnout fall, because then they can actually make some of those changes that, interestingly enough, are beneficial. So it's not they're not evildoers, right? They're just they have different motivations than us in many ways.
They're anti-democratic.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that is, it depends on, I guess, like what is, what becomes the, what is the key principle that you're hanging your hat on in that moment. And do we see also in that era the professionalization? I know maybe it came a little bit later, but I think it was around this time we also start to see towards the end. I mean, are we technically still in the Gilded Age until through the 10s and the 20s?
People argue progressive era. Yeah.
The progressive era. Some people argue that we're still in that Gilded era, but that progressive era brings in, stuff like city managers and local election reforms that make government less responsive, essentially, to the people.
Yeah, they have fewer elections, they have at-large leadership, they have all these things that kind of are designed to break up the power of campaigns and of bosses, and also to remove politicians, especially Congress, from the people. That they stop it. Throughout American history, the size of Congress had expanded with the population, right? Because you want it somewhat proportionate. In 1911, they stopped at 435 Congress people, and we still have that today. For the last century, the population of this country is 3 times larger than it was, but we still have the same number of Congress people. So they're all proportionately that much more distant. These are all kind of legacies. They introduced the filibuster in the Senate for real use in 1917. These are all legacies of this point in time when they want politics to be quieter, more restrained, easier. People stop thinking about electoral law as much. We talk all the time now about kind of voter suppression and what the law is in Georgia versus what the law is in Arizona. This really kind of is what they talked about up through this era. And then it kind of pulls back a lot for a while. People are much more private about their politics, private about their partisan beliefs. There's just a removal of the American people from electoral democracy in many ways.
Is that part of the dynamic that kind of leads to the permanent fixture of the, 435 members of the House of Representatives? That's sometime later, right? In 1930 or so?
No, it's right then. It's 1911. They stop expanding it. And then, we still have 435 to this day, which is astounding. It used to be if you traveled. Yeah.
We should theoretically have about 1,400 lawmakers if we were keeping up with the ratios. And there's no law, right? I mean, there's no mechanism to inhibit it. It's just like it just fell out of favor.
Yeah, and if you read the diaries and letters of people in the 19th century, they get on a train and they sit down next to their congressman and they talk to them. Or there are a lot of young people who first learn about politics because they're on a steamboat and their congressman is riding on the same steamboat and they start talking. There's just a lot more. You go to the saloon and you meet your representative. There's just a lot more interaction and a lot more influence. And in the absence, money and power is what influences these congressmen, because they're not bumping into their constituents, they're bumping into donors. So yeah, there's a huge change in this era. And their benefits, we get all this positive legislation, but it really erodes participation in the and engagement.
Well, how much of that, though, is like their desire to essentially, as you say, narrow it specifically to moneyed interests so that they don't have to worry about kind of these different constituencies, and that's more of an afterthought as opposed to, you know, we can go to these specific big wigs and they're going to help me get reelected, et cetera.
Yeah, I think there are two motivations there. One is it's always nice to have money on your side, and to only have to talk to these few donors is easier. Running the previous campaigns was a ton of labor to get people to march and vote and hand out ballots and, you know, fight in the street in your name took a lot of work. And they really want to calm that down because they don't want to be engaged with the kind of people who are handing out ballots and hollering your name in the street. So they kind of fall back in some ways on big money because it's just easier for them to find 10 donors than to find 10,000 marchers. So, you know, there's a lot going on with income inequality. This is the Gilded Age. They have a lot of motivations, but one is that they want to find a replacement for the big, loud, old style of campaigning.
So the paradox here is that there may be good legislation that we get at that time that is somewhat progressive because of the nature of, I guess, some of the intentions, you know, where there was this sort of paternal feeling by a lot of these politicians. But it completely erodes the responsiveness of our government to the people. And much of that has been revived, right? I mean, that dynamic shifted a little bit, it seems to me, during the sort of the Great Compression from following World War II into the 70s, but only because you had you had rising economic power from the middle on some level, and then ultimately what became emancipation for a lot of people. But that erasure, like those steps have been sort of reintroduced in some level, right? I mean, voter suppression, moneyed interest in politics, et cetera. I mean, we're sort of replaying that era without the good intentions, it feels like.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like we had the worst of both 19th and 20th century democracy in some ways. Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to work on this book and see every day. I went back to the 19th century because I didn't really want to argue about the present. I love the way history can kind of expand our perspective, and then you can't ignore what's happening every day in the street, and you can't ignore what's happening every day in elections. So it seems like every election we do see these trends that I thought were buried 100 years ago reemerging. In addition, in terms of partisanship, political violence, distrust, all these forces that we've seen before reemerging. I guess the one saving grace is that we've seen those forces constrained in the past. And there's a paradox and there's a trade-off. But sometimes I feel like we talk about what's happening in our democracy today as some kind of inevitable downfall. But we've seen it up and down over our history. And I think there's value in seeing that, even if it's not always purely for good changes.
Right. It's not necessarily a downfall, but all right, just broadly speaking, just to wrap it up, like what in a generic sense, what comes out of that? You lessen the power of the people. Generically speaking, what comes out of that era? I mean, discontent at one point, right? Because people are just nothing's being addressed.
You mean in the late 19th century or in the 20th century?
Well, in the 20th century, I guess.
I think what comes out of it is an attitude that democracy and politics is someone else's business, and you shouldn't talk about your beliefs, and you shouldn't engage, and the sense of kind of conformity and lack of engagement and apathy towards, you know, public life that we see throughout much of the 20th century, where people just say, oh, it's somebody else's problem. It's, you know, these kind of big presidents and executives who decide things, and lack of sense of personal ownership on your democracy. And I think we've been seeing today, for good and for bad, as voter turnout rises, as civic engagement rises among young people, as we talk about democracy, voting laws, elections more, I do think we're expressing an ownership in our democracy that you haven't seen in America in 100 years. And so if you want to be optimistic, that's a positive trend, I guess.
Right. A lot less likely that politicians can ignore the existence of people and just end up driving things into a ditch like we saw in the 20s. Or I always look to Flint as a good example of that. When you have less democracy you have, the more chances are you're going to essentially run your population into a brick wall or disaster, it seems to me. And then there's pushback, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating era. Jon Grinspan. The book is The Age of Acrimony, How Americans Fought to Fix Their Democracy, 1865 to 1915. Thanks so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, folks, going to take a quick break. Then we'll be back. Wrap it up. All right, folks, that's it for us today. If you watch us on the Peacock app, on the Choice channel, the Peacock app, we will be back tomorrow. But some food for thought as we head into this era. It would be so much better, I think, if we did have 1,400, 800 even Congress people. And it would make, first of all, it would make gerrymandering a lot less relevant, it seems to me.
Right.
I need to do the math on that, but the idea that we have the same amount of representation that we did when the country was 1/3 the size is just bizarre. And this is the House of Representatives, as opposed to the Senate, which is supposed to be, essentially just a House of Lords.
But the smaller the number, the less money you have to pay to buy them off. So
that's also true. That makes it very convenient. All right, folks, we will say goodbye to our Peacock folks. See you tomorrow. And for those of you who are still with us, we're going to head into the fun half. Boy, do we got a lot of stuff for the fun half. Looking at my sheet of stuff right here. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, you also get extra content. And now also, apparently, every membership, I'm not going to say that. I was thinking about Crowder, the guys in the hospital right now, I think. I just want to make it clear. I did nothing physical to him.
Right.
Nothing.
Well, if he's having any physical reactions, it's purely just in response to any emotional reaction he might have had to the debate. Right.
Exactly. It's the mind-body relationship. And
that's a little too Eastern for him. So
yeah, but he's living it, right? I mean, is it a coincidence? I don't know. That
we're just asking questions.
First off, let me just say this to folks. If you are feeling for an extended period of time coldness in your feet, go see your doctor. I mean, that is not your extremities should not be that cold. And you put it off. This is what happens. So
needs some circulation down there, man.
Yeah, exactly. Don't forget, Know Me Show now twice a week. You can find that at youtube.com/The Know McKee Show. Oh, here she is. Oh my God, it's Tuesday. I'm so messed up.
You thought it was Monday. Yeah,
I did. I thought it was Monday. Nomi will be here in a moment. Matt, in the meantime, why don't you tell us about the Matt Leckian Media Universe?
Yeah, I'll make it quick because I have a double voice thing going on. But Victor Poggi talk about Brazil and Lula on Left Reckoning this week, and Austin from Machete Mate. We're going to talk about his trip to South America. So 8 Eastern, Wednesday night now. We moved to Wednesday. So
Oh, you moved to Wednesday night? Wait, what's the double voice thing?
No, I'm mute. I'm mute when you talk, or I'm trying to do my best to do that.
Well, we'll see. There's just OBS, I think, has my voice coming in twice. I think it sounds good, but...
it sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
Oh, but maybe it's loud out there. I see. Naomi!
What's up?
How are you doing? You feel like you're coming from like an astral plane. Like there doesn't seem.
I am
like
actually
she's floating on like some type of.
We're astro projecting her, I guess.
Should I put some cushioning around this? Is that what's happening?
It looks like you're literally calling us from a cloud.
I mean, I'm a little bit in a cloud right now.
So, all right, the show.
All
exciting news.
Exciting news. Yes, our show has moved to Wednesday and Friday evenings, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. So we put in just as much show. Everybody gets the same amount of show. It's just not Tuesday through Friday, like every single day, which, I think makes it easier on a lot of people. And you get just as much of the show during the week. So subscribers, patrons, everybody gets 4 hours of show. So it's exciting. It's an evening slot. And a lot of the same folks will be on as regulars. We're going to have extended interviews a little bit longer because we just realized a lot of people wanted longer interviews. And just like when things were getting spicy, we were like, and now we have to go to our panel. So we're able to extend things out a little bit more, which is fun.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want
it's a better time slot too.
You don't want to close it down when the spice starts happening.
Exactly.
All right.
So check us out Wednesday. And then, of course, the committee programs on Monday as well.
And is that still happening at 3 p.m.?
As of right now, yes. It might change. Next week, though, this is a real fun one. Arun, who hosts the committee program, the two of us will be on the Athens Riviera at a global left conference of some sort. And we'll be airing from there. So you definitely want to subscribe because we're going to be running around with like chasing down, leftist prime ministers from Kosovo and other places I was promised because this is like Arun's job and I'm just there to, be his sidekick basically.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Are you there right now?
I am.
Whoa.
It's only 8:30 p.m. guys.
Wow.
That's the cloud.
Nice. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're heading to the fun half, 646-257-3920. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to take some calls, but at the very least, we're going to read your IMs and talk about things in the news. Be right back after this.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us
this? Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. It is the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. Emma Vigeland, Nomi Const, echoing Matlack, and Brendan, quiet Brendan.
Poor Brendan.
Let's go to the phones. I turned it on. I couldn't help myself. Calling from a 773 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This be Uchi Wally, man.
Uchi Wally, how are you? What's going on?
It's been a while. It's hard to get into the show these days, you know? But now I'm first, and that's the way it should be.
You called in, like, as soon as I turned the thing on, you were right there.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about a couple things. I'll hop right to it. You had a call from the Indian guy a couple days ago before the weekend. I called in about this before, but he made the comment that his crypto racism was caused him to say that black folks pathology, a word he didn't use, but one that you read a lot when you see conservatives talk about black folks, are probably caused by out of wedlock birth rates. I called in about this before, but I think it bears repeating. The only reason that the out of wedlock birth rate for black folks is higher than white folks is because the married black women are having a lot fewer babies than they used to. And the actual fertility rate for out of wedlock births among black women versus white women is virtually the same these days, because it's been declining in the black community for 50 years straight now. And, that's just a talking point you see all the time that coming from the right.
So to be clear, that when they say that there's an inordinate amount of children born out of wedlock in the black community, it is not a function of a heightened or rising rate of single mothers as much as it is a diminished rate of motherhood amongst married black women.
Exactly. Okay. There was a higher black rate among unmarried black women in the 1950s, but it's dropped to barely higher. It's statistically insignificant, but they have to pretend like black people are pathological, right? And the only way you could state that statistic of there being some pathology among black births is to state it as a percentage, right? So that's the way they do it. It's just a smear campaign.
It's also an effort to kind of say that black people are inherently, as you say, pathologically incapable of adhering to the nuclear family archetype that's so, embedded in like presentations of suburbia, and this is the way to live a good capitalist American life, and that's inherently white in terms of how that's attempted to be portrayed.
Yeah, and one more thing on that, it's the conservatives have a problem where they want to deny that racism exists, right? So what he was saying was he didn't have the courage to say it because he was being a crypto racist.
Well, that's why I should just reiterate why we basically ended the phone call yelling, "What are you saying?" Like he would not articulate.
I missed
point.
This.
He wouldn't say the problem is they breed like rabbits and we should just let them die.
Right. Well, he wouldn't say anything. He kept sort of like floating like it was all innuendo, right? He was just saying like,
Exactly.
here's this statistic. Okay, what does that mean to you? Well, here's another statistic. Because he doesn't want, and that's what's so sort of nefarious about this. You can manipulate statistics in any way you want. You get the opportunity to call in. You say the statistics, and then you're just like, I don't know. I'll let people make their own conclusions of these misleading statistics, and that's it.
Exactly. You lay out the argument that they breed like rabbits and we should let them die, but you don't state the conclusion. You just lay out some propaganda that would lead you to that conclusion, quote unquote, logically, but you just don't state it, right? You leave it unsaid and you let the native racism of the population lead themselves to that conclusion. And that way you can dodge being called a racist yourself.
There it is.
One more thing before you let me go.
Yeah.
I think one more important point is that, if you look at the statistics, Black median wealth is 1/10 that of white median wealth. And the problem I have with us not teaching history, and we got all this crazy, critical race theory stuff going around telling us that the schools are teaching white kids to be ashamed of being white, and they never ever give you any proof that that's the case. They just state that as a fact and never back it up. And you see this, and you read about Tulsa, and 2 days ago, or the last week was the anniversary of a huge race riot in St. Louis, the area where I'm from, where the militia had to be called out to escort Black people out of town because white people were murdering the successful neighborhoods. They were just tearing them up. And you see this, there's like 35 major race riots in American history. And part of all of them is that they would destroy successful Black economic base, right? You saw it happen in Tulsa, it happened in St. Louis, it happened in Chicago more than once, it happened in New York more than once. Central Park, it was a fairly successful Black neighborhood that got destroyed to make a park. So when you see that Black people are 1/10 as wealthy as white, you have two conclusions you can reach. One is that they're lazy and just that they need to work harder. Or the second conclusion you could reach is that they weren't lazy, did work hard, and that wealth was destroyed. And by keeping people ignorant of the history, it leans people towards the conservative narrative.
Absolutely. And then, you could, obviously you can go a lot further. Sandy Darity brought up a lot of these points, but you can go and then just all the way up until post-World War II with the federally backed mortgage loans. Wealth is largely a function, intergenerational wealth is largely a function of homes. And if you take that out of the equation, that we're not going to give you the opportunity to build wealth over generations, then of course. And, that is,
You're absolutely right. But my point is that when Black folks manage to overcome that, redlining is a horrible way to prevent Black people from ever gaining wealth. And then also you got to talk about the GI Bill,
right,
which was largely denied to Black folks.
Whenever
Black folks managed to overcome that, it was just burned out in a riot.
Yeah, exactly. And we also saw that in the early to mid 1800s in Ohio and Michigan area, where you had 10,000 or so free Black farmers who were doing very well, and there were both violence and laws to basically outlaw Black wealth. That's the bottom line. Appreciate the call.
Okay, thanks for letting me rant. I'll try to call in a little bit more often. I enjoy these talks.
I do too, Uchi. I appreciate it. Militant Apathy says Atlanta race riot in 1906, same deal as Tulsa. And Simple Socialist says, I've also heard the whole Black kids with no fathers is based on a statistic that only counts married people as a whole couple and not, say, Black mothers and fathers who live together but just aren't married for social or financial reasons. And the actual rate is pretty much on par. But Joe from Wisconsin comes in with an alternate view. Sam, it's pretty messed up. You didn't update us on the Black and Black violence numbers first thing this morning. I've been getting a lot of calls from Ron Johnson for a virtual town hall. I joined for 2 minutes, and it was just talking about how he's going to look into the election results from November. There you go.
One more thing that's really weird to me is like, what do they consider single mothers and just not being married? 1 out of 3 Black men was imprisoned for no crime, basically, over the last 30 years. So how does that factor into the situation?
I'm not sure what the breakdown are, but the bottom line is that the single mother rate, actual rate, is there's not much disparity between the Black and white communities. It's really just a question of how many, according to Uchiwali, how many married women are having children and how many children they're having, or I should say married couples.
It's incredible to me, like the scientific racism or whatever they call it, right? Where they rely on, say, it's just the numbers, dude. It's just, also the numbers aren't even airtight in any which way.
Meanwhile, also, what's their agenda? Like, what is that number doing for them? What is it evidence of?
It is, like Emma said, it is creating a sense that there is a pathology associated with race, and therefore, I mean, once you establish that, supposedly, then there is all sorts of steps that you can take that you're dealing with pathology.
Yeah, any step to naturalize the hierarchy. It's the sort of thing like if you're going to deny climate change, don't just deny the science, just like emphasize all the places on the world that are colder than normal, and you don't need to, you can actually say facts, and you can lead those facts to a actually incorrect conclusion.
Correct.
In half with the snowball. And
meanwhile, it appears Donald Trump's CFO, at the very least, is going to wage a vigorous defense against the allegations of tax fraud. We'll see. Right now, it's just the Manhattan DA. We'll see if it ends up being the Department of Justice too, because a lot of the alleged crimes that this CFO perpetrated in the indictment were federal taxes. So that means it's a federal case. Right now, we just have the Manhattan DA who are doing this. Here's Donald Trump at a rally in Sarasota, Florida, even though his good friend Ron DeSantis had asked him, hey, right now we're dealing with the deaths of over 100 people. We've only been able to recover half those. Maybe it's not a good time for a rally. What? Yes, it is. Now the cameras are already down there.
My high-rise would not fall over.
And yet they go after good, hard-working people for not paying taxes on a company car. Company car. You didn't pay tax on the car or a company apartment. You used an apartment because you need an apartment because you have to travel too far where your house is. You didn't pay tax. Or education for your grandchildren. I don't even know. Do you have to? But does anybody know the answer to that stuff? Okay? But they indict people
Your
for that.
CFO should.
But for murder and for selling massive amounts of the worst drugs in the world that kill people left and right, that's okay. Think of it. Think of how unfair it is. Never before has New York City and their prosecutors, or perhaps any prosecutors, criminally charged a company or a person for fringe benefits. Fringe benefits. Murder's okay. Human trafficking, no problem. But fringe benefits, you can't do that. Every abuse, and by the way, every company and every, who the hell, people don't even know. They don't even know. Every abuse and attack they throw my way is solely because I have been fighting for you against the corrupt establishment. That's all it is.
You know, every working person knows what it's like not to pay taxes on the company car.
Wasn't that what he was supposed to be railing against? Like, that was his original thing?
I was going to say, like, what? Like, how many of those people are out there going, like, fringe benefits? What fringe benefits?
The quote is, they go after good, hardworking people for not paying taxes on a company car.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That never seems to, like, make a difference in the past in terms of, like, but there doesn't seem to be the same sort of electric feeling in the air in that rally. Let's play the other clip, too. Let's watch this.
Well, yeah.
I know more about tax abatements. I know more about taxes than any human being that God ever created.
Oh my God. Wait, so what I'm curious about here is, there's this new DA, Alvin Bragg, that's going to be most likely, once we're seconds away from him being confirmed as the new Manhattan DA. I'm curious when that becomes a racist cry too, because Alvin Bragg is going to be the first African-American DA of Manhattan, because he's going to take over this case.
Well,
from
won't
Vance.
he have to run in November, or is that?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
it's
so he
Manhattan.
won't take over for a while. And,
Yeah, you're right.
And it's going to be in there, but at one point, yes, I would imagine. And Tish James also has a case and is involved in somewhat.
Mhm.
I mean, I would imagine it is going to become racialized at one point, but we'll see. That's 6 months in, and
But I just love the concept of him. He's going to increasingly devolve into talking about things that are even more unrelatable to people, and just say it's working people, like, when like the corrupt Democratic establishment isn't responsible for cleaning your gold toilet or whatever. Like,
Guys, I've been evading taxes my whole life. This is how I built my brand. Why is it suddenly an issue? Everyone's been doing it. I created it. I don't understand.
Also, is he admitting that if he knows more about taxes than everybody, then
right.
a lot
Shouldn't
of
he
these
have known that he was breaking the law?
a lot of these issues, he's admitting that he's the foremost expert. So
what is going to be interesting is if this case becomes increasingly in the forefront of his mind. And I hate to compare in any way Lenny Bruce with Donald Trump, but the thing that brought down Lenny Bruce ultimately was, in terms of his comedy, was that he was so fixated on his case from Chicago, where he had been arrested for saying foul-mouthed things on stage, that he was reduced by the end of his career to just reading off the indictment at his comedy shows. And you really needed to be a hardcore Lenny Bruce aficionado to appreciate him just riffing off of his indictment at that point. And I wonder if Trump will devolve into that point, and if it will diminish his political salience on the right. I mean, I don't think for some people it's not going to go away, and maybe for some people they don't even need it because you have Q. But he's pushing right now Herschel Walker in Georgia, and I wonder. I got to think, if I'm Raphael Warnock, who's going to be up for re-election in November of 2022, because it was a special election. I got to wonder. I think I'm out there hoping that he pushes Herschel Walker, because I just don't know if Walker, if somebody who, what happens to someone like that who's running running a campaign like that against somebody who's really running a campaign. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see.
How big his rallies are right now? Is there a sense?
No, but I don't know how much that really tells you anything anyways, because
I think it does. There's some sort of excitement. No,
I don't necessarily think it does, because you can have big rallies, relatively speaking, for a politician, but that's because the depth of connection is really high. Like, I just remember learning this lesson up in New Hampshire in 2008, I think it was. And everywhere you went, every single place you went in New Hampshire, there were Ron Paul signs everywhere. Nobody was holding any Mitt Romney signs. It was 2008, or McCain signs, I think it was. Nobody was holding any McCain signs. Nothing. And then you realize that every Ron Paul voter, the relationship between voting for Ron Paul and holding a sign for Ron Paul was 1-to-1. And so every person who voted for Ron Paul also went out and held a sign, because their depth of commitment to him was so high. But he still came in, like, I don't know, fourth or something.
That's an election. I mean, I'm just curious in terms of his raw popularity, in terms of if he's still making, if people are turning out to these rallies, it's still it's a way. I mean, obviously they're probably doing some sort of numbers on his approval ratings and whatever, but it influences the other Republicans so that they kowtow to him. If he's still turning people out, and some Republican running for Senate in Georgia or elsewhere brings him, it affects the turnout for that electorally. I'm just curious.
It might. I don't know. It's possible. But all right, let's turn to something else here. Let's see. What should we cover here?
I'm obsessed with that video. Or, well, one, the Christy Gnome thing is pretty hilarious. But two, the Walmart video is something that really
all right, let's play
tickled
that one.
me. Yeah.
Let's play that
So
one.
crazy.
This is I don't know if we really need to introduce this. This is at on the 4th of July.
And it's at a Walmart in Texas.
At a Walmart in Texas. And
excuse me, it's actually the Saturday. It was the day before.
Okay. All right. It's the 3rd. Well, at least you don't have people working on the holiday, even though I'm sure they had people working on the holiday. But here it is. July 3rd, Texas Walmart.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there really is probably nothing more American than like singing this weird, creepy, cultish song about the US to a bunch of minimum wage captive audience employees who are working on a holiday weekend, right?
Against
I
a
love
box
the
of
fact
Mountain Dews.
that it happens in a place where, incidentally, probably none of those products are made in the United States. But in just sort of like the most sort of consumer oriented, you're at a picnic on July 4th weekend. I don't know that I would break into the national anthem, but I can understand that people do. And whatever floats your boat, but to do it because you saw one of the many flags that they're hawking that undoubtedly made in China at the Walmart, and you start to belt out that song and everybody stops. That's something I hadn't seen before, but let me just, can you imagine if somebody didn't sing it? If somebody just walked right through that crowd of people?
That would have been me, and I would have
Yeah.
stole a TV or something. Like, that's what I mean, right? Like, get out of there.
But the point
really.
being that if it were liberals doing this, let's say, right, or this was happening, like if there was some version of this,
Like Chinese Americans singing.
my point is that this is what conservatives would perceive as being oppressive. Like, to us, we watch it. It's a little bit amusing. It is a little bit ironic that they're doing it surrounded by products that were not made in the United States. It's very performative. If people are really concerned with promoting the United States, they'd be walking around and boycotting half of that stuff and saying, we're not going to do this until you raise wages for Americans and until you start, not buying all your stuff in China. I mean, but that type of performative thing becomes so oppressive to the right. The idea that, like, if it was wokeism, if they were in there even talking about, equality or that you should, any type of protest becomes oppressive. Whereas this is just supposed to be like, this is what real Americans do. Am I making sense here? I'm trying to the mirror image of this becomes an oppressive complaint for conservatives. And I guarantee you there will be some conservative show that complains about how non-Texas Americans are mocking this, that they're doing it in the Walmart. And that is the oppression that people are suffering.
It
And
already
even
got
if
to that
you're
point.
a patriot. Have we already gotten there?
That's where the timeline got to already. Yep.
Oh, it did.
I'm sorry.
I thought it was going to be.
I was slow on the prediction.
The new Walmart commercial.
Yeah. Who is complaining about the reaction to that already? Is oppressive.
Well, the person who uploaded it was saying that it was incredibly cruel and totally typical of libs to get triggered and make fun of this performative exercise. I think that's part of what it is that bothers me too, right? Is like there's this sense that it's inherently authentic when really it's one, brainwashing, and two, like look how American I am. I'm gonna stand here, tearfully put my hand over my heart and stand at attention and stop what I'm doing because I just have to show how devoted I am to the country. I mean, cut to North Korea where people have to display, how they are as devoted as possible to the leader and cry, etc. And Americans will make fun of that all they want to. People have made this point already, but that's
at least there's a sense
mirror
of
image
fear.
of that. Yeah.
With their we cut off camera, and many of them are understand that they have to perform to survive. Whereas the real brainwashing is the consumers who are so passionate about going to Walmart and leaning against their sugar cookies and one guy has his hand on the wrong. It was like he had to stop. He has his hand full. He's like, I gotta stop what I'm doing. I'm about to drop my case of Mountain Dew. I have to. I'm being moved. I mean, I see this as the next Walmart video. Like, how they always do these patriotic support our troops videos. Like, this is the cut at the end after they talk about how they've given like $2 to some troop fund that they actually get tax breaks from.
Here is the alternate, the alt version of this. Here is this is not Fox and Friends, right? It's just Bill Hemmer's show with Dana Green. It's not the 5 or anything like that. So here is one of those stories where right-wing media tells a completely fabricated story, and then the Fox people justify it because it would be something that they expect would happen. This is featuring Clay Travis. Here it is.
Topic here.
Well, I also wanted to ask you about this. There was this dust-up over the U.S. women's soccer team. There are some people who think that there were members of the team who were turning away from the flag and the anthem that was being played there. But then the U.S. soccer team said, no, actually, that's not true. Some people were just looking at the different flag that was there. Carly Lloyd, she's a midfielder. She said, we turned because we faced the flag, and she gave a little flag emoji. I know I watched the video. I feel like maybe that makes sense to me, but what did you see?
Well, first of all, congratulations to the 98-year-old World War II veteran who played the national anthem so beautifully before this game. I think he deserves an awful lot of commendation, credit, and applause from everybody out there for what he did in the past and also what he did just yesterday. But I think this is, Dana, emblematic of where we are with sports now, where a huge percentage of American sports fans totally think it's believable that the U.S. women's soccer team would turn their back on a 98-year-old World War II veteran as he plays the national anthem and not even think twice about it. I, like you, Dana, watched this video. I think it's a little bit confusing. They weren't all faced in the same direction. And I think it is unfortunately a sign of where we are as a country that so many of us just presume that that level of disrespect is occurring by our national teams during the anthem.
I tell you, you can tell the sensitivity on behalf of the women's team by how forcefully they were publicly and resisting the suggestion that there was any disregard for the gentleman with the harmonica or the flag itself. But Clay, I tell you, in Tokyo, this is going to be a story. And on some days, it's going to be a bigger story than the games themselves. Last point on that.
It's unfortunate. Remember, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee.
Pause.
We're certainly going to try and make it a bigger story.
Right.
Than the
It's going to be a story because you're driving it forward. Right.
We're going to make it a big story. That's one thing I can tell you. And I will say this, like, it is really, we might not even have to report it. Like I say, it is in the minds of my viewers anyways, so we'll just let them project onto the TV what they want to see so that they can get their hate on. That's why.
No,
And
thanks
so-
for previewing your production meetings.
Exactly.
Over at Fox.
What can we present that will just play into people's preconceived notions? I'm so disgusted by the fact that we as an audience is able to develop a straw man that even though it doesn't appear, it still exists in our mind. So it's more or less the same thing. And of course, like, no word as to what they were protesting in their, they're just protesting in our mind. Our straw man doesn't have any agenda. He just exists and dances around. And then we go, God, look at him dancing. Damn it.
Isn't it so offensive that we have gaslit the American public to such a degree that now we're claiming that they're going to see every protest as an extension of the culture war that we've projected onto them? I mean, no agency, no understanding, but that's purposeful, of course.
And of course, if all of the teams are now protesting, the problem must be with them and not us.
Well, of course, too, because also they were being so defensive about it. They, in their minds, they probably, were protesting, even if they weren't outwardly doing it.
That's right. They're acting. You look at their body language and then reinforced by their body language that they're using to hide their body language. I would say this, they were doing that. Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea. They may bring on some body language experts just to kind of go through every podium ceremony at the Olympics and see, were they thinking about protesting the flag? Were they thinking about disrespecting that brave man with the harmonica? Was that even in their minds? And you can tell by their body language.
It's one thing to...
It's almost like you could give him a score.
This is not a guy with a piano. He's got a harmonica. So there's that. That's pretty impressive stuff, I think. Even how disgusting, like oppressive, the libs are, even when they're just not even doing what we think they should be not doing. That in and of itself is an offense.
You know what's great?
I'm sorry.
This is also just like really un-American.
What's that?
Like how un-American? Why doesn't MSNBC I want like MSNBC to be talking about how un-American it is that they're just criticizing our teams. Right. Ultimately, like that's the flip, right? Why? I mean, if they're going to play that game, then flip it on them. Fox News,
they probably,
being un-American.
MSNBC will probably do that, but I don't know. I don't think that stuff works anymore. I think it's just like now it's just fodder entertainment. I mean, I don't like, I think we're past that.
Yeah, but are Black people and women really American? Like that's part of what drives it too, right? When they go after that specific athletes and then the focus on the women's soccer team there.
That's why we shouldn't have women's soccer.
Harmonica's American.
It undermines the country. Calling from a 615 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 615. Are you there? Now I don't know if it's me or what. Calling from a 316 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? What is going on now?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, this is Eli in the Netherlands.
Eli in the Netherlands. What's on your mind?
Oh, wow. Oh, shit. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was a bit taken aback because I'm using this service to call. Anyway, doesn't matter. Good to be here. Thanks, Sam. I was a teacher for many years and have come to regard institutionalized education with a great deal of skepticism, maybe a bit of antagonism. I haven't heard you talk a lot about education much on the program, except in certain contexts. I guess I was going to ask you a question if you had heard about a term called unschooling.
Sure.
And do you have any thoughts or feelings about that?
Well, I mean, it basically involves, right, like a homeschooling type of situation, or where it is. I guess. I mean, are you a student if you're not in a school? I mean, I if people want to take their kids out of school and they have the resources to stay at home and teach them, that's, all well and good, I guess. I have some, opinions upon what that does in terms of people's sort of, how they get socialized and whether that helps strengthen, people's sense and connectivity to the community. Although I'm sure there are circumstances where it can be done in such a way that is helpful, but that is not an answer to providing education for as many people, as good an education for as many people as possible, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I have nothing against per se, a building or a series of buildings that contain within it interesting and interested people, caring adults, sort of community within those walls that contains resources that people, that people can participate in. I mean, it's a different situation here in the Netherlands. Homeschooling is illegal. And there's something called the leerplicht, which is, a requirement to go to school. That, and that is, different. I mean, the laws vary within, from state to state about how homeschooling works, how the education of a given kid is assessed, blah, blah, blah. But I think that to address the question of, like, for example, sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going to slow myself down here a second. To address the issue of socialization.
Did you hang up? He hung up.
What a cliffhanger.
Well, I mean, I don't know what happened to him, but let me just say this, like, arguing that you don't need the socialization or that the socialization you get in schools is bad and this and that does not address my point. My point is that, like, look, like I say, if, I don't know, I don't know that there are circumstances in which I would not send my kid to public school, but I can imagine that there would be,
to public school or any school.
Well, I mean, I firmly believe in public schools, but it's not inconceivable to me that if I didn't have the ability to live in an area where there was a decent public school, then I don't know if I had then a ton of money, would I send them to a private school? It's not inconceivable to me, but in the main, I want my kids to feel like they are part of a citizenry and that they have a responsibility to the people around them. But that's not the only reason why, that may be, my personal decision in terms of, like, why I send my kids to school, in addition, obviously, to getting an education. But as a policy standpoint, from a policy perspective, the option that we're talking about with unschooling, where we should take our kids home, is just not an available opportunity for most people. Most people need to go and work so that they can pay for their rent. Now, if we get into a society where certain things are decommodified, right? Like where we're not worried about healthcare, we're not worried about housing, where maybe at that point, one parent can work, and there's more opportunities for broader based people to take their kids, to teach them at school, home. But I can't imagine even at that point, really, if you would be able to do that, or people are skilled enough to do that or want to do that. And so I don't know, the unschooling thing is, if that's what people want to do, I don't know that there should be a law against it, but it's not a solution to anything other than what is for a specific family that has the resources to do that.
Sam, what I don't understand about it, though, can you help me understand? Because I missed something along this process. Unschooling is taking your children out of school for homeschooling or because there's still standards where you have to actually, at least in the US, where a child still has to receive schooling? Is the supplement homeschooling, private schooling, pod schooling? I don't know, everything else that people are doing now. Is it tutors? I mean, what is the supplement that they have? Or is it just completely just taking them out of schools altogether?
No, it is they get schooled, and they do the standards, the homeschooling. I mean, Michael was homeschooled for a big part of it. And Michael used to joke that when he went to college for his college admissions thing, that the admissions person said, you're sort of, you're I don't know what he said, like, you're able to socialize in a way that most homeschooler kids can't. And sit there and now there's no doubt in my mind that society teaches us, broadly speaking, to be productive little worker bees, and that it does narrow our imaginations and whatnot on some level. Schools,
But school needs to be defended as, like, the content can be objectionable, but as a place where the state funds, where kids go to basically be around other kids in the community and get fed, like that, and not have to go work, for instance, when you extend this to later ages. It's so vital to protect schools, and we just need to improve the content and what happens.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, I mean, it's the same argument that's given when we're talking about, like, the necessity for charter schools as, like, an alternative method, right? Where you essentially can more individualize your child's experience as opposed to strengthening the.
Well, you can't necessarily at all charter schools. I mean,
Not at
sometimes
all,
they're
but
even more rigid. But yes,
but okay, taking your child out of the district that where you're at, essentially, or I think it's part of upholding a myth of, like, rugged individualism in some ways, where sometimes kids that people that make these arguments about charter schools talk about taking specific kids out of difficult school circumstances and making them a part of something larger and more effective and shinier, which essentially just saps the resources of public schools. And this, like, I forget what phrase he used, but the kind of homeschooling argument that we're hearing, that's just like a more niche version of that same argument.
I mean,
we're seeing this argument with the yeshivas right now in New York, where you have the Orthodox community who has found this loophole, and it's a very controversial issue in which they don't have to, I know I'm going to get a lot of notes from this, but because I did when I ran for office, the yeshivas they don't have to follow the same standards as pretty much every other public institution, public school institution, private institution. They have a loophole. And what you're seeing is that kids that come out of these yeshivas where they're socialized with other kids in yeshivas, and there's a heavy, Orthodox element to this, it's all Orthodox community, are not assimilated, not just in like New York. I mean, this is like specifically New York City thing, because New York City resources are going to them, but they don't have, they're not learning the same things that every other New Yorker is learning.
Well, it's not just a question. I mean, they don't know basic math. They don't know basic science stuff. And first of all, what that does is, of course, it traps them, and I'm not, I don't want to, suggest that, everyone in these Orthodox communities, probably not even the majority, although who knows, but certainly a percentage of them, a greater than zero, want to secularize at least some level. But then they cannot do that because they don't have the skills that you need as an adult to earn a living, to do some basic survival things in modern society. I mean, look, I am sympathetic to the argument that, when you go into big institutions, it narrows, sort of the range that people, there is a natural process of, like, some elements of individuality are lost. I am sympathetic to that argument. But we also live in a society, and the people who can afford to generally, maintain that individuality by, homeschooling, usually have more resources. And the bottom line is, as a society, we need to do this. We need to do this for human beings. to
But
survive.
also, just statistically, it's better. The most individual thing you can do is be part of the collective. Because statistically, I'm sorry, you're not going to become Donald Trump if you go to a charter school or whoever your billionaire obsession is.
You're not going to become
we
Michael
have to
Brooks either. Like
Right.
I know people who are
Exactly.
homeschooled, and like it's like 1 out of 3 is like normally socialized in my experience. Like that you can't tell that there's a deficiency that from not being around their cohort of kids.
Yeah.
The individualistic impulse is interesting to me, though, just in terms of, I mean, you both were pointing that out, right? I mean, how that fits into like how that's a uniquely American way of thought in many ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a strong
Like preserving individuality as if it's this like prized resource or endangered species of, your golden child. And a lot of that, I think, stems from very religious thinking. And then, in other people's in specific instances, maybe it's fine. But
narcissism.
There's a lot
Yeah.
more religious homeschooling than anything else. Anyways, which one should we do? That's
this Christy Nome thing amuses me.
all right. Let's do that one.
Yeah.
She's really working on her 2024 VP bona fides. That's what my guess is.
She's bringing her kids into it here.
She is. This is number 6, right? This is Christy Nome is being asked about the idea of. This is. I see. This is not the. This is just you're talking about the Twitter thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's this one? I didn't know this one.
So essentially, this is her new culture war pro fireworks crusade, essentially. # sparklers suck, which, as culture war, I think crusades by Republicans go. I don't know how salient this is going to be, just because I don't see its appeal outside of 4th of July. But like, our Americans really love fireworks, so maybe there is some legs to this. I don't understand it. I think they're atrocious, noisy, dangerous, wasteful exercises. But here she is with her kids holding sparklers and frowning. Her son's wearing a MAGA hat. I think these are her kids, right? Her son's wearing a MAGA hat and a Raised Right T-shirt. Seems really fun.
I
to
don't
hang
understand
with.
the meme. Like, so it's pointing up to Trump's America, and it's Mount Rushmore, which should be, defaced with some fireworks, and then it's them with the sparklers, though. Like,
well, that's the thing. She's saying, like, look, this sucks. Well, I'm just sitting here with my family.
I guess there were no fireworks at Mount Rushmore due to environmental concerns.
well, yeah,
this
there's a
year.
massive drought caused by climate change.
Well, in Biden's America, you come to
sued,
New York
too.
and there's massive fireworks. But it's like, but isn't it just sort of saying like it sucks? We have our family together, but unless we get to light stuff on fire, it's no fun. But here's a picture of people who are not together. It's just stone people. It is not. She didn't do it very well.
Well,
This is
I
not
mean,
good.
also, yeah, she should center Trump's America, have it there. It wasn't exactly clear because she had 2 photos on the bottom, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't count if the big light doesn't go boom. So.
Also, the big light is Chinese. So once again, caught not supporting American products. So
Also, sparklers rock. I don't know what people's problem with sparklers are. Like, especially the old metallic ones, they burn so
Yeah.
bright. You run around with those things; it's super fun.
But
super
they're
fun for
tiny and they go in your hand and it doesn't go big boom. So it's kind of like,
Yeah,
And you have to do it
be
yourself.
with your family. So
Right.
that's the other problem.
I'm glad, though. I mean, she seems to be indicating that she and her family had a horrible time on July 4th because there weren't specifically fireworks over those.
We
you
had
know,
to
that
talk
structure
to
I
each
know.
other. And
Look,
that
I'm happy. I'm happy. Honestly, if she was a true patriot, she would have found a way to celebrate America and have some joy on that day, even with the sparklers. There were no sparklers in the
Should've
founding
gone
of
to
the
Walmart.
nation.
We have some footage of her as well talking about the situation at Mount Rushmore this year.
What consultant
Governor.
told her to do this?
No fireworks this year.
Well, it's a typical Washington, D.C. liberal bureaucrat to think they know better than the people who live here every single day and get up protecting that monument to make sure that our great-great-great-grandchildren will still get to go visit it.
They're literally protecting the monument. They're quite literally protecting the monument because they don't want the forest around it to completely be engulfed in flames due to climate.
It's also a national park, not a state park. So she should know about that sort of liberal bureaucracy in her own state.
Someone's got to slice that. And when they run against her, just remind the entire state of North Dakota, what a climate denier she is. Like, she just slice that piece right there, put national park, put the fires, and that's it.
I wonder if being a climate denier helps or hurts you.
You gotta,
right?
You gotta.
No, I think
it's got to be the environmental side of things. People care about their parks and stuff like that, and frankly, understand that when you're in a massive drought that is affecting everybody's lives and is dominating the farm report, that maybe we cannot fire off some fireworks this year.
Why not just roll in some laser light show? Do that. That would be much better.
That's a good idea.
Oh yeah. Well, also apparently, by the way,
the smoke.
That photo was
put it
from
between
the
the lights to the
Obama
smoke.
era too. The one that she tweeted. Not that that's kind of the typical surface level liberal owning part of it, but
this is a little bit more important, frankly. I just still don't understand how this is legal, where a state can rent out their National Guard to a billionaire so that the billionaire can make a show of sending these National Guardsmen down to the border. Here's Dana Bash and talking to Asa Hutchinson and about Kristi Noem sending those troops via a billionaire political donation. It's crazy.
Of the Biden administration.
I want to ask about what your colleague in South Dakota, Kristi Noem, is doing. She's raising some eyebrows because a billionaire Republican donor is funding her National Guard deployment instead of South Dakota taxpayers. Would you ever use political donation to send your troops to the border?
Not for this purpose. This is a state function. It is something that we respond to other states in terms of disaster. I would consider it a bad precedent to have that privately funded. Whenever you're looking at supplemental pay for some state employees, we use private foundation money, so it's not across the board rule against that. But in this instance, I think it's very appropriate that we have our paid for by the usual state budget.
Before I let you go,
well, that's how you know Hutchinson will never win a Republican primary,
right?
on the presidential level.
Can I raise money to rent the National Guard to maybe go in and force schools in South Dakota to teach critical race theory? Can I do that?
Yeah.
Only for nonpartisan, Sam.
Rent the National Guard from New York State, send 50 troops into a couple of the schools in South Dakota and force them to teach critical race theories. That's what I want to do.
Better yet, yeah. I mean, I think we should start a crowdfunding campaign for anybody who watched that Crowder video. See if they'd be interested in funding the National Guard to make sure that we're taught, that we teach everybody. I mean, let's drop the pretense, not critical race theory. We want to teach everybody that white people are bad.
I need to the money needs to go to me first, though, because I want to be able to be the general for this National Guardsman, and the way you do that is you pay for it. So I don't want there to be sort of dispersed. So just to be clear, that crowdfunding thing, the money has to go to me, and then I turn around and rent it, because I'm not sharing power over my private army with other people.
Well, like a good, authoritarian conservative, I do deflect to you.
Thank you. I appreciate the donations from everybody to support this, but I've got to be in charge.
What's the oversight on if that even goes to what you're saying, right? I mean, this could be a total Trump border wall scenario.
Foundation.
Right. Or
what do you mean?
I mean, what I really don't understand, though, in reality, though, is, okay, so if this is going through a foundation, that's their loophole. But Really? I mean, how have we not known about this before? How is it that like 2 states can't be pitted against each other, or 3 billionaires can't like use one National Guard against another? I don't, is this really legal?
It seems
Are we
to
sure
be
about this?
highly illegal, but I don't know. Really messed up. All right, let's take a couple of
declare war
phone
in New
calls,
Jersey?
and then we'll do some IMs. Calling from a 646 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. It's Joanna from Queens.
Joanna from Queens. What's on your mind?
So just really quickly, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but I think it was on 4th of July. Some big white nationalists paraded through a protest in Philly.
Yeah.
And in a crowd, another crowd came in and literally kicked the guys off the parade and sent them home, which was awesome. So I wanted to talk about that. And secondly, if you look at Ethan's and H3H3's podcast, they have this clip on Tim Pool losing his mind over Ethan. And there was this one clip where he goes that Tim Pool's going crazy that AOC is telling women not to have children because of the climate crisis. And then he goes, I think that's the reason why I don't have a marriage myself. It was crazy. It was a hilarious clip. I recommend everyone to watch it.
Wait, is he saying, let me just to be clear, Tim Pool is saying the reason why he's not married is because AOC has told women not to have children?
Literally, yes.
I mean, let me put it this way. If AOC told women not to get involved with Tim Pool, and that's working, what's the highest level of medal that we could give an elected official?
We should commission Biden to give her the Congressional Medal of Freedom.
Can we send her lists of people that tell, like, I mean, this is a new type of incel controversy. AOC driving women away from conservative men.
That's a new wrinkle, though, because Tim has previously said something like this, and I wanted to share that for the time being.
I can't possibly have babies because of climate change.
Right, which is nonsense.
No,
but I do think it's crazy that I'm about to be 34 and I have no family. Because my dad had 2 kids by the time he was 27.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you know what the problem is, though? It's definitely not me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's everybody else.
Hell yeah, bro.
Straight face. It's not my beanie or anything else.
But the thing is like, he has no self-reflection.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I wish I had a response to that other than yes, you're exactly right. Just a little hint. Like, if you're saying it's everybody else, it's not me, that is the time for you to say, like, I'm going to take 5 minutes and think about this again. Wait a second.
And like, he can't.
Sam, is this why he really hates you? Because you have kids?
Right away. Like, just go, talk it over. Something might be wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the phone call. We will check out that clip from Ethan. Thank you.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Bye. I'm sorry, Naomi, what were you saying?
I was just saying this might be really the root of this all, is that he just has kid envy looking at you. That's really what this is about.
I don't know how anybody gets kid envy looking at me, but I will also say to Tim, if you're listening, that I didn't have my first child until I was 38, 39. So he's still got a couple of years. In fact, I mean, the reality is that Tim has a long time. I had a child when I was 46. So it's doable. And I know people who've had children when they're 50. So Tim, you got a long time. There's opportunity for you to change. But of course, everyone's so messed up. There's no way that you're ever going to meet anybody who wants to have a child with you, because it's all their fault.
I'd recommend a vasectomy, Tim. That's what I would recommend.
I don't think that that may be.
Seems like seems wasted. Yeah, right. He's self-vasectomizing with every word he says.
Just imagining that lucky lady.
You never know.
Calling from a 971 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 971.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, okay. I'm Katerina from Oregon, and I wanted to talk about something that's been happening around here. Is
Okay.
that okay?
Sure.
All right. So, in Southern Oregon, specifically Medford, the city council has decided to go to homeless tents and to sweep them. And this isn't new, but what is new is the heat wave that came to Oregon, and the temperatures went over like 100 degrees. I think the highest is 117. And so I think from this CNBC news article, it says about 63 people died from the heat wave. And so the city council of Medford is basically risking like all these homeless people to die in a heat wave, and they're closing the cooling shelters.
Oh my God.
And so, yeah. And there has been people, specifically Southern Oregon Coalition for Racial Equity, who has been donating ice and water to help the homeless. And we're trying to do everything we can to mitigate the harm, but it's not good. It's
All right.
pretty bad.
Well, do me a favor. Where can people, if they want to donate to that organization, where can they find that link? And if you want to tweet at majority.fm, we'll retweet that.
Great. I can tweet at you, and also they have a Facebook page. It's called SO Equity.
SL Equity. Okay.
And they also have a website called SO.org.
SO Equity, are you saying?
Yes, it
Okay.
stands for Southern Oregon. But
Okay.
yeah.
SO Equity, and what was the other one? SO
Equity.org.
Okay, soequity.org. Okay, great. Folks will head there, and there it is, and try and help out what's going on. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's insane.
And finally, I just wanted to bring attention to a specific politician, a Democrat named Kevin Stein, who ran saying he'll help the homeless, and then he voted to ban the tents during a heat wave, and then he posted a tweet saying living in their heads rent free, and the picture is a tent with the words Frick Stein on it, and he's like mocking the homeless that he is harming. And then he then tweets again, doubling down, and he says that he is going to get McDonald's and get a McFlurry. He doesn't care about the harm he's doing to the homeless.
Insane.
So, yeah.
All right. Appreciate the guy.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. Thanks. We'll put that link up. Thanks. All right, folks. That also reminds me. This was tweeted out by Larry Levitt, who is the executive vice president for health policy at the Kaiser Family Foundation. So pretty legit resource. Starting July 1st, people who have received any unemployment benefits during 2021 can get 0 premium health insurance on healthcare.gov for the rest of the year. You got to go to hhs.gov and look at the news release for June 29th, 2021. The American Rescue Plan lowers health insurance costs. Speak to a ACA navigator, or maybe your health insurance person may know, but try and find a navigator. Those are like the community organizations that help with ACA. I think if you look just online, local navigator, and ask them about the American Rescue Plan free insurance for the rest of 2021 if you've received any unemployment over the course of the year. So, and this is happening, I believe, like the COBRA stuff starts to run out at the end of, or very shortly. And so this is a good fill-in. Is it Medicare for all? No. But is it going to help people in the, over the next 6 months? Yes. So I just want to put that out there as a resource. We'll try and put a link to that, okay, in the thing. One more phone call, and then we're going to wrap things up. We've got a lot of people on hold. Here is 504 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Noah from Louisiana.
Noah from Louisiana. You, sir, are the final call of the day.
Thanks. So I don't believe Crowder is afraid to debate you. I've seen him debate on Change My Mind, and I've seen you debate Kirk, and trust me, he is not afraid. And by the way, Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute says he wants to debate you, and I don't hear you answering him. So okay. I think you should.
What's your name? Noah?
Because
Noah?
Wait, one last thing. I just want to
Hold on.
Don't be afraid, because since
Noah,
Noah, since Trump derangement syndrome. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Noah. Hold on for one second.
Since Trump derangement syndrome.
Noah.
He's pretty stupid. So.
Noah. Yaron is coming on tomorrow in the fun half for a debate. A. B. What is your explanation for Steven Crowder avoiding me all this time?
I have no idea.
So there's no way to figure it out, but you're absolutely sure that he's not afraid to debate me.
We know what you think. Can I tell you what I think?
I just asked you, why do you think he did it? And you said you have no idea. So I'm just reiterating that that's
not my complete thought.
Excuse me, hold on.
My complete thought. It's
you
one
don't.
point.
Yeah. So far, you have no
and
thoughts.
I was going to continue.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't know. I'd like to hear his side. And then the other thing is the position you have is
you heard his side.
Follow the science. Dude, you don't want to let me finish. Apparently, you're afraid of what I'm going to say.
No, I'm going to let you finish the next thing. But
I more evidence Crowder's afraid than Sam is, pal. You're still on the line.
No, hold on. I'm going to let you speak. Believe me. Just hold on. You're changing the subject. You're changing the subject. We will get to that point. Noah. We're going to start.
What?
We're first, before you move on to the topic that Stephen wouldn't debate with me, we're going to stay on the question of your assertion that Stephen is not afraid to debate me, even though you don't know why he didn't debate me when he had the opportunity.
And listen,
if you got to shut up now, dude. Okay, you got to shut up now.
This point too.
Listen, I muted you. I will bring you back on. Oh wait, shoot. What was his number? What number was he?
504.
Okay. I'm going to bring him back on. I thought that muted him. All right, listen. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So just don't talk until I finish my statement. Then you can talk. I asked you why you think Crowder didn't want to debate me, even though I made it very clear on that call that I was willing to debate exactly the topics that he wanted to debate Ethan about. He didn't do it. You have no idea why he didn't do it, but it's not because he's not afraid to debate me, which is amazing that you know exactly the reason why.
No, it's not amazing.
You're also wrong about Yaron Brook, so let's just add that to the.
You were also wrong about Yaron
to start the call
in a hilarious,
embarrassing energy to bring in about that Yaron thing. You're absolutely wrong about.
If you want to debate me
so now
about
we got another
why
person saying I'm wrong without letting me speak.
Right. If you want to debate me, that's the first thing you've been right about. If you want to debate me
I'm right about everything, and you're wrong about everything, but you're not letting me speak, apparently,
if
so
you
you're
want to
afraid to answer my
debate
point.
me about the science on masks, I'm willing to have a debate about that.
You're restating the same point over and over again and not letting me speak, so you must not have a point.
Go, dude, go.
To let me speak.
Go.
So listen, I don't have to know why he doesn't want to debate you. All I know is I've seen him debate, and he's smarter than you, and I've seen you debate, and you don't know what you're talking about, and the position of follow the science is so stupid, I'm sure he's not afraid to debate that. Now,
but why?
I don't have to give you my reasons, because I'm just basing it on only what I know about Crowder.
What were you
So I don't
basing
have
the
to
Aaron
get into
Brook?
details. I can just tell you, look.
What were
Can
you
I finish
basing?
my point?
I don't know. It's not. You're not really making any.
All right. Well, yeah, go ahead. So go ahead. Everybody's heard this so far. So come on. All right, continue.
No, he said that
so I
follow
don't
the
have to
science
give
is
you my
stupid.
reason. So if I know Tom Brady is a better football player than somebody else, and he does not want to go play him, I don't have to give you the reasons. I just
Yes, you do.
This
You
guy's
don't
better
understand.
than Tom Brady's better. I don't have to give you the
how
reasons.
football works, but it's a team that plays, and there's a schedule. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know
So-
about football. I know more about football than you do. Trust me.
Well,
But
not
anyway,
more
let's
than
go,
Emma.
Let's go.
But
Move
go
on to
ahead.
the next point.
Okay. So
I
what?
know about everything more than you do. But go ahead.
Guy rock.
Except
You
for
rock,
the,
dude.
Except for the Yaron part.
Yeah, what about the Aaron
Right?
Brook thing?
Except for the Yaron part.
Consensus is
Well, go ahead.
a
Hold on.
scientifically tenable intellectual point.
Okay, make the point.
Follow the CDC, follow lying Fauci, follow the science, and then shutting up all other scientists who disagree. That is unscientific, unintellectual. It's basically stupid. That's my position. Let's discuss.
Okay, who shut up what?
Everybody. If you, Dr. Drew can't say what his opinion is on
Dr. Drew, bro?
Dr. Drew!
Oh my
After
God.
he was told to deny it. That's my point.
No, I'm laughing at you now because
Yeah, we're all
You're
just
laughing
laughing at you.
science.
You're laughing because you don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
you're
Let me
going to
finish the
take
point.
the
So
opinion.
Doctors are getting fired.
Let me be
because
clear.
they
Let
come
me
out
be
for
clear.
hydroxychloroquine.
Dr. Drew's no longer on the case.
Dr.
Damn
Drew's
it.
family is getting death threats. Yeah,
Okay.
Chatter. You guys know I'm right, and so you're afraid to let me speak. So you're laughing like idiots. So
Right,
listen,
that's exactly
so
right.
You just spoke.
Damn, right again, man.
It's called a
That's
denier
it.
by the
That's it.
morons at the New York
All right,
Times.
Listen.
A Yale doctor wants to prescribe hydroxy, and the Yale, all the other doctors write a letter rebuking him because he's not an infectious disease doctor. I've never heard another doctor say, "You're not in that specialty. You should shut up."
Doctors criticize other doctors all the fucking time.
Wait a second. Hold on, dude. All right. Okay. You're just vomiting stuff out.
Also,
here.
he's talking about Alex Berenson,
hey,
by the
you
way.
don't know what you're talking about. Shut up. Follow
Yale,
the science.
right.
Is a ridiculous position. Go.
Okay.
Well,
all
we
right.
haven't established that at
So
all.
first off, Dr. Drew knows nothing
can refute
about
everything you say.
epidemiology.
Dr. Drew.
And I will listen to
That's a
professional.
dumb
Hey,
position.
I
That's
thought
a
you were
dumb
going to
position.
shut
Go
up
ahead.
now, dum dum.
You're a dum dum.
Okay.
He doesn't know epidemiology. You don't know what he knows about epidemiology. You don't even know what it means.
What is he?
Okay, I don't know what epidemiology means.
So what?
Do you?
That's argumentum ad hominem. And
you're.
And you do?
Argumentum
Oh.
dum
an
dum.
argument from authority,
You-
which is not an
Dude,
argument.
how
You
old
don't know
are
what
you?
he knows about
Wait,
epidemiology.
hold on.
Is he
I want
in
everybody to
high
be
school?
quiet here.
Yes.
I want everybody. How old are you?
See, now you don't know. I don't give any details. All that
I'm just
matters is
curious.
the evidence.
How
You don't wanna
old are
discuss
you?
Evidence. So
How-
tell me why.
What
you
is
don't, you don't
what?
think
Okay,
Dr.
all right.
Drew,
Let me ask you
who's a
this:
Harvard-educated
what did
medical doctor,
Dr.
doesn't
Drew?
know epidemiology?
What is
And what
Dr. Drew?
epidemiology does he need
What
to know?
what is Dr. Drew's field of practice?
That is a dumb. What's the point of that question? What is the evidence that he's citing for the specific point he was making, and why is he
You
wrong?
said to me,
This is argumentum
you
ad
don't
hominem.
know.
Look up the word,
You
look up
said
the
to me.
fallacy argumentum ad hominem.
All right.
Go.
You said to me that Dr. Drew knows about epidemiology, and I'm asking you, what is his field of practice?
He's an internist. He's in internal medicine.
Okay.
He should know epidemiology enough. No one should have to be a doctor even to argue about epidemiology if they're arguing on the level where they understand. And so if a moron like Fauci says, don't wear masks early on, this thing is not a problem Americans shouldn't worry about, and then later on he contradicts himself, you don't have to be an epidemiologist or a doctor or anything to know that he's a moron and a liar. Go.
Well, you don't seem to understand that
I
the
understand everything.
scientists, none of the scientists, but well, there were some maybe who thought you should wear masks early on, but many of them did not realize how this transmitted. There was a broad
How
assumption
do you know that?
early
What
on.
What was their evidence?
There was a broad assumption early on that it was transmitted
wasn't.
by touch. That was what the concern was. That's why they had you clean, keep disinfecting your hands and washing packages that came in. And then the scientists began to realize, as more data came in, that it was through the air, and then also aerosolized. Now, do you think that people should wear a mask? Yes or no?
No, the evidence not out in public, everywhere you go, when you have no symptoms, that's ridiculous and shouldn't be mandated, that's for sure. If they want to wear a mask, the evidence is clearly does not show any benefit when you're walking around past people on the streets.
Well, I would say in
It's a way to
public, I
control
think in
people.
public at this point, I mean, short of maybe the Delta variant is more transmissible, and this is presuming that you're unvaccinated. Do you believe people should get vaccinated?
No, definitely not. The vaccine has killed. There's an association of at least 6,000 deaths, according to VAERS.
Oh, you fucking idiot.
Okay.
In the world?
That VAERS thing, you're
Two
misreading
times
that
the rate.
VAERS thing. All right. Are you aware of how many people in the United States died in the month of May from COVID?
No, I don't think anybody's aware because they're lying to us with this data.
I see.
They're giving us.
So the
they're giving
data's
us
wrong,
a
but you're
report.
citing VAERS.
VAERS got
You
to
trust
that
Dr.
report.
Drew,
The
the
forum.
VAERS got it right, but the COVID.
What I
numbers
don't
did not.
understand.
So wait a second.
So, there's
So
a great
VAERS you
website.
believe,
Website. Go to the
VAERS you
CDC
believe,
website and they
hold
give
on,
you the deaths.
VAERS you
6,000
believe,
of them were
VAERS
poisoning.
you believe, but you don't believe the CDC numbers on who died from COVID. Is that right?
No, I don't, because they're giving us people who died, whether they had COVID or they died of something else. Burks said that specifically.
Related to
I can
COVID.
give you a
You're full of shit,
video
man.
where
You
she
are
says
so
that
Oh my
out
God, man,
there.
you
They're
are
not
so
distinguishing between
deluded.
people who
So
died of
why do
COVID.
you accept VAERS, but you don't accept the other CDC reporting on the deaths of COVID?
No,
You
No, I
realize
don't
VAERS
accept
is a
VAERS
part
as
of the CDC,
proof that
right?
Those 6,000. Hold on. I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain. Every stupid thought you have
Emma?
will be explained if you give me time.
You hold.
So 6,000 deaths from a new vaccine is an associational problem. We have to confirm that. So now we don't know this is a new vaccine. We should make sure those deaths are not
Do you know
definitely
what
from
the
vaccine.
okay,
But
yeah,
we're
blah, blah, blah.
seeing-
Do you know
we're
what
seeing-
CDC? Do you know what the CDC is reporting for deaths? Even if you think that data is false, do you know what it is?
It was 600,000 last I saw.
No. But in the month of May.
Total.
Oh, I don't keep track every month. No. Why?
Yeah.
What?
Okay. No, you're on
What's the
top of
point
this
of
stuff,
that?
man. Well, it was 18,000. Do you know how many
Listen to Dr.
people of those
Yeah, okay.
18,000 were vaccinated?
Yeah, so that brings me to the article from the Associated Press that you lied about when you read it, and you skipped over the sentence. Here's the sentence that you skipped over when you read it. The CDC itself has not estimated what percentage of hospitalizations and deaths are in fully vaccinated people, citing limitations in the data. And so I'm picturing the AP morons and trying to figure out what
When
happened.
was
They're
that-
like,
when
well,
was
we
that
deduced
from?
that it's 99% of
When
people
was
who
that
got
from?
vaccines didn't die. But you totally skipped over that, proving that you lied.
What-
Also, you lied that Trump called it a hoax. But go ahead.
Just move. Stay on the point.
What?
Stay on the point of the vaccinations.
The point you
So
brought
you
up
get
about
18,000.
the CDC was your point.
150 people in May
Mm-hmm.
who were vaccinated died from COVID.
Okay.
17,850 were unvaccinated out of the total 18,000 who died of COVID. Those are approximate.
You're reading their AP article that the CDC says it could not fully, it cited limitations in the data. And so it couldn't corroborate what the AP analyzed. That was the AP that analyzed. That's the study you're quoting. That's the sentence you skipped over. Maybe you did it by
Correct.
accident. That's why
And
you
you
don't
just
know
called
this.
the AP idiots, and then now you're citing their authority. It's a little odd.
And
You're
then
doing the
Fauci
same
has
thing.
said
You
the
guys-
same for
because
June.
He's
Ding
reading
dong.
the study. I don't trust them. but
Okay.
he's the one
You
who
don't trust
believes it, so I can
anybody,
cite them
any
for him.
statistics.
Who do you
that
trust
don't
Dr.
work.
Drew?
Just VAERS and Dr. Drew. All right. Good luck, bud.
No, Dr. Drew was an example.
The addiction expert.
Somebody who,
I got news for you. Dr. Drew ain't an addiction expert. I know people who worked on that show, and what he did was reprehensible.
Yeah, Dr. Drew's a fake doctor who is completely discredited because of stuff he did on television. But great example of somebody being, canceled, so he
we
can't
should
give us
have
the truth
ended
about
it
hydroxy
right when he
fucking
said,
chloroquine.
"You're not listening to Dr. Drew. You're just listening to the epidemiologist," whatever that means. That was pretty impressive.
I want to know what this guy does.
The
He
VAERS,
listens to
to be
Crowder.
clear,
Yeah.
the VAERS is a completely raw data where anybody who has any type of association that thinks that is attached to that. Now, there have been over we have over 50% of the country now, more or less, with the double shot of vaccine, over 50%, at least a single vaccine. 150 million people. And supposedly there's raw data of like completely unconfirmed, self-reporting 6,000 people who claim that they died from the vaccine. I mean, that guy is insane.
Right, like people die after taking the vaccine just happen to because they're old and it gets caught up in the data, for instance, is my guess of a lot of where that's coming from.
Well,
or people had it before they got the vaccine.
I bet this dude's really worried about voter fraud, but he's not concerned about any verification process on theirs where people can
Dr. Drew says.
Self-report if people they know have died of COVID. And, you know, like, it's definitely over-reported based on people who are just, you know, anti-vaxxers trying to
Can you start asking these people
late.
like...
I'm 15 minutes late, so I got to jump, but we're going to do 3 IMs and then get out of here. I'm sorry, folks. I totally lost track of time. Joe from Dayton. Hey, Matt, did you hear about the news with Audacity? Yes, he did. I noticed that Matt tweeted, we use it, Audacity here. What happened? And now a company bought it. Yeah, I know it's horrible. We'll talk about that later. Rubang. So we come back, or is this some unhanded scope? Okay, that was when I lost sound. All right. One more final IM of the day. And Buonara, the best debate winners always declare in advance that they've won without the debate. All right, folks. Brendan, Matt, Nomi, Emma, great job today. We got to run. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know